Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, District 5030 Rotarians, and thank you for joining us on day 4 of the Festival of Training on this beautiful Saturday morning. The Festival of Training, of course, is the new online pilot program developed to inform and prepare Rotarians in our district for the coming Rotary year, beginning July 1st. We're closing out week 1 with this session, and then we have a gift planning session at noon. This working session is Global Grants, the details, which will be presented by Kathleen Davis of the Ballard Club, chair of the district's Global Grants Committee. Kathleen's going to guide you step by step through the grant application. My name is Henry Wong from the Seattle International District Club, and I will be the tech support for Kathleen in this session and help moderate questions. We'd like to start off, as we do with each of these sessions, with the Rotary International Vision. It's just a good way to put a framework on what we do as an organization. So the vision: together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. So we're going to a couple quick housekeeping things. So if you're new to the Zoom platform, so in webinar mode, everyone's automatically put on mute. So you don't have to worry about that. The host can unmute you. Because it's a working session, we'll have a few spots along the way where we'll take questions. So as we go along, if you have questions, we ask that you type them into the Q&A box. The Q&A box you'll see on your control panel, which should be at the bottom of your screen, but maybe it's at the top or on the side, depending on where you moved it. But if you click on the Q&A button, you can ask your questions, and there'll be a couple points during this presentation where we'll stop and field those questions. And then at the end, we can also open up the mic and use the raise hand function if we have time at the end for Q&A. So now I think I'm happy to turn it over to Kathleen to start with the presentation.
Well, good morning, and thank you for coming in and spending your Saturday morning with me and learning how to write these global grants. So this particular session, we are going to go through the global grant step by step. I've screenshot every page, and in my position as the chair of the Global Grants Committee, I get to see every global grant that you all write. So over the years, our committee has come up with very specific hints and different frequently asked questions that I'm trying to add to each of these pages for you so that you can do it more smoothly and more easily and have a better understanding of what they're really asking. There are 3 places where I have an iRest, and there, if you type in questions about what I've just said, then we will be able to answer a couple of those, and then at the end we can answer more questions. Because this is being recorded, and my intent is that you'll be able to go back and go through the part of the video on a particular page that you're having a question about and might want to say, well, what did she really say then? Because it was like 6 months ago. When you ask your questions, please keep them brief, but also realize that you are teaching too. So it should be a question that the answer is applicable to everybody and not just your particular grant. So this seminar is for people who are wanting to write global grants, want to know what information you need to be able to have a global grant, and what does it take. We're ready to write now. Okay, first of all, the qualifications. You have to, every year, your president has to sign a memorandum of understanding with the district. That basically says that you are responsible for the implementation and the financing of your grants, whether it's a district grant or a global grant. So I will show you where to find that MOU, and you can send it over to your president, have them sign it, and have them send it in once a year. So do that in July. And then 2 members of your club need to attend one of the 4 grant seminars that we've done this week, including this one. If you want to write a global grant, you need to have attended, one person, the writer, needs to have attended a global grant webinar as opposed to the district one, which would qualify you for doing district grants. Okay, so if you've seen any of these others before, you've probably seen this. This is the go-to website. It is a really hot website. It has everything you want on it. And for global grants, you punch that global grant link there, and you will have a lot of the resources we're going to talk about. And in addition, we will have these lectures, these 4 lectures, plus Larry's lectures and Jeff's lectures on here, and the slide decks. So you can always get back to it by going to this particular site. Bookmark it. Okay, now you're going to go to myrotary.org. Then you'll click on Rotary Foundation. You'll hover on Rotary Foundation, which is in the horizontal bar, and over to the left, you will see Grant Center. And you can then click on Grant Center, and this is what you will get. You can see at the top of this screen, it says Apply for Grant. That's where you can start your global grant. So what you'll be is in draft status after you start putting in information on your global grant online. And so what I'm taking you through today is draft all the way to authorization. And you'll only get your authorization for matching funds if you have passed this somewhere along in here to my committee, because we're the ones who budget the matching funds. So we need to know about that. We also give you advice to help you get through the part with the Rotary Foundation. Okay, then it'll be submitted, and then hopefully you will get your money eventually, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So on your first page, after you've gone to apply for grant, here's what you will see. You're going to name your project. It'll probably be a humanitarian project, and that's what I'm talking about today, but there are also vocational training and scholarship opportunities, and we're not talking about that today. You will click on this Add Primary Contact, and it will fill you in, and then you'll add the primary contact for your host club. Now, really important, on every single page of this application are hot links on this side. Every page has the same hot links. So every single piece of information about grants, global grants, are right here. So first of all, before you even get started and do your global grant, you can do your application, but before it's going in, you must have had a needs assessment. And here is the form for the needs assessment and the manual for how to do it. So this needs assessment, the community assessment, means that somebody has been in this community that you are targeting, and they have talked to the community people, both the men and the women, both the leaders and just various other people, and they have either done focus groups or interviews or any other kind of assessment tools so that they really know what the people need, and knowing that there are lots of needs, what have they prioritized that they want to work on first, and they will help you plan. They will have some kind of skin in the game. So they might have be paying fees for the grant. They might be digging ditches for pipes for the grant. They might be donating land for the grant. Whatever it is, the whole thing starts with what the community wants. Next, you'll be putting in, so that's before you do, that has to be done before you do the grant. You could get a district grant to pay for that, but the global grant does not pay for that community assessment. Okay, the next thing is your committees. So there are you and 2 other people on the international side, and the primary person and 2 other people on the host side. The host is in the country. They are hosting the grant, and hopefully it's a club that's really near the beneficiary, town, city, whatever. So you'll just be adding those members by clicking here. Very important. What is a conflict of interest? You cannot have on your committee somebody who is on the staff or on the board of the nonprofit that you are working with. You cannot have on the committee somebody from whom you are buying the major supplies from. So those are the people that would be a conflict of interest. So what I tell people is you might be on the board and in the Rotary Club, but you're not on the committee, but you can certainly do all the work. So you're advising and so on, but the committee oversees the payees, and therefore you can't be overseeing and a payee. Okay, now it says, the next page says, tell a little about your project. They don't mean a little. This is your elevator speech. This is your hook. This is where you want to very specifically say, A, what are you doing in this project? Is it buffing up a school? Is it putting in water? What are you doing in this project? Next couple of sentences is the need. That you visited this place and they told you that this was their primary need, and what are, maybe one or two statistics, whatever you would have in your most passionate speech. And then how are you going to do it, and about how long it'll take and how many beneficiaries is it going to impact. So you want to have those nice and succinctly, but you can write a paragraph or two here. It doesn't have to be that brief. The next page, step 4, is to say which focus group you're going to be in. Now you can be in 2 focus groups, but not more than 2. And for each one, there will be separate metrics, separate measures, separate ways to measure things, and so on. So it's more complicated if you have 2 focus groups than 1, but it's possible. So for instance, I did a focus group where I put sanitary stations on a school, and then buffed up the computer lab and the curriculum and the teacher training in the school. That would be 2 focus areas. For the purposes of this talk, we are going to be doing 1 focus area in basic education and literacy, just for as an example. Okay, I have an arrow down here. This is very important. This is a nice short article that has the focus groups, what they want you to do in those focus groups, what you can't do in those focus groups, and what are the measurements in those focus groups for each of these focus areas. So it's a really important to start with that. So in that particular statement that I just pointed out, for education, here are the things that they want you to do. You can choose any one of them. This one, if you choose scholarship, that's sort of a whole different thing, the criteria for scholarship. So that's probably not something you're going to do. But these, any of these 3 or all of these 3, that's up to you. And then how are you going to measure it? So you're going to add a measures, and they have a drop-down list, which I'm going to show you. And then you will be adding those measures, and there's an other, so you can add that. And then who is going to collect the information? That is usually going to be, and you'll say, do you have somebody to collect the information? And that will be probably your nonprofit, your staff, nonprofit staff, or teachers, or a principal in a school, for instance. You're going to describe the organization there and why are they uniquely qualified to be implementing and monitoring this. So it's fine if it's a great big organization and it does good in water, but if it doesn't have specialty in education, then you have to say why it is that they're going to monitor an education project. Be very specific. So that drop down for measures looks like this. You're going to select a measure, and for education, the measures are these. So whichever ones of these you are doing, and you can also have other if you want to measure something else, but you must have 1 or a few of these. You can't just do other. And then the collection method, it's going to be one of these. And then this will say, and I'm going to do this collection method, like once a month or twice a year or every week. And how many beneficiaries will that collection method measure? So for each of these, you're going to fill out this. Also in that same manual, what does TRF not fund? So I chose education because in schools, this has been very controversial. They will not build the school. They don't like to build buildings. They don't want to build, they don't want for education, and it'll be different for each of those focus areas. These are the things that they do not want to do. For everybody, they don't do salaries, they don't do tuition. There might be a few school supplies that are part of a whole, but really they're focusing on the things that are sustainable, that are going to last well beyond this grant. So that's not true of food and school supplies. Apparently they don't want to do playgrounds. I didn't even know that. But I need to say that you can do these things with a district grant. So let's say you go to another organization to build your school. You could go to a district grant and with less than $30,000 build their library or build their kitchen with your district grant. So it doesn't mean that Rotary can't fund it one way or another, but in the global grant, no. Okay, this is an eye rest. So are you feeling like I've smashed your head against a tree, or are you just sleeping quietly like these elephants are? Are there any questions, Henry?
We have one question, and as a reminder, if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom. If you have any problems finding the Q&A, you can also just type them into the chat window, and I'll see them there. We have one question from Elena. I have wanted to share these forms with the Rotary Club I work with in Brazil. Do they come in other languages?
Spanish, and I don't know about other languages. You'd have to ask your country desk. I don't know if it comes in Portuguese. That's a very good question. Never been asked that before. Thank you. Okay, moving on. So this is very simple. Where is it going to take place? When will your start date be? The fact is you don't know when your start date's going to be because your start date is after it's been accepted by Rotary International. So a good sort of start date would be 3 months after you've submitted, if you know when you're submitting, but it really doesn't matter. What matters is the gap. So they want to know, is this a 3-month project? Is this a 2-year project? So the length of time is more important here than if you're getting the start date right, because the start rate is going to change. Okay, now if you went to my Thursday lecture, you know that the roles of partners are key. We already talked about the community being totally involved. And then there'll be the nonprofits, and you'll have an MOU with them. I'm going to talk about that, and the host Rotarians and the international Rotarians. Global grants are like a marriage. You really need to know these people before you jump to live with them. Now, I'm going to talk for a minute about the host Rotary Club. That club, you need to know, is a good club for global grants. And what I mean by that is they may be the friendliest, nicest of people, but maybe they're not so good at keeping accounts. Maybe they're not so good at getting all those receipts in and into one particular file so that they can show Rotary International in the end exactly how every penny was spent. And maybe they're not good communicators. So you might want to talk to your country desk and see if they have any outstanding reports. You might want to find out other global grants they've done and talk to those international leads to see if it was easy to work with them or not. So those are things that you want to find out about your host Rotary Club. So you're going to be putting in the name of the organization that you're working with if you have one. And then there'll be a drop down to describe again why that organization is the one and its background in schools in this case. And then if there's other partners that you're dealing with, if the government says that they are going to be sending the teachers or something like that, you'll also talk about those things there. Rotary really does not pay for volunteer travelers. A volunteer traveler has to be a specialty that is required for this grant, and the local host Rotary Club has said that there is no one in the country who can do that, and therefore that international person has to come. So usually you're not paying for travel and you just leave that stuff blank. And this, yeah. And the cooperating organization, these are some of the things the cooperating organization might be doing it. So you have a marriage between the host Rotary Club and yourself, and the cooperating organization is a contractor to you too. So it's important to know that relationship. And it's really important, I think, that the nonprofit has some of the beneficiary population with the same language, the same ethnic background, the same culture as the people that they're going in there and teaching and working with. It just makes it more sustainable. Excuse me. The local host club is not a pass-through. You can't say that they're just going to do the accounts. These are some of the things that they might be doing. And you'll be writing that up, and that'll also be in your MOU. Again, the International Club is not just a fundraiser. It has to be involved. So these are some of the things the International Club might be involved in. Both of you, and you're responsible for making sure that these reports are written on time. So when you get your grant, You will have a report due 1 year afterwards, and that can be a progress report or a final report. And then if it's a progress report, every year you'll have to report until you do a final report. Memorandum of Understanding is with anybody providing services for you. And this is an iRest. So is your neck all cricked up and you're almost falling asleep like this giraffe? Or do you wide awake and you have some questions?
We have some questions, Kathleen. So one is TRF does not fund, or it says it does not fund, for example, playgrounds. It says exclusively. Does that imply that it may be funded if it's part of a larger project?
So we don't know, and it's always worth a try. So let's say you're doing a pretty comprehensive school program in terms of training the teachers, maybe putting some supplies in there. And then part of that maybe has some education outside. So maybe if it's a small part of your grant, but it would be useful for the kids to be learning, I would stick it in there. And the worst that can happen is they say, take it out. So that, you know, it really needs to be part of a big whole thing. The district grant, however, could just put in the playground. Okay.
We have two more questions. So one is, so how about adding to a school such as an extra restroom? Since the school
So
has
yes, so you can definitely add sinks, water, sanitation, all that stuff you can add. And if you're doing that, then you've got another focus group, which is fine. So, you know, the example that I gave was just such a thing. So yes, certainly anything that has to do with clean water and sanitation, you can add. And then you're going to have hygiene education and allowance for menstrual needs. And you'll be saying, you know, how many girls' bathrooms, how many boys' bathrooms, all that kind of stuff. That's all underneath the water and sanitation focus area, and combining the two makes a huge amount of sense. Yes.
we have a question on clarifying what the country desk is. Is it the district or city
Okay.
Rotary in the
Yes,
country?
that's a good question. So for every place that has Rotary clubs in the world, there's a country desk, and in Illinois at the headquarters for Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation. So that desk, which means an office, really is who is going to be reviewing your grant. And on those hot links on the right is a list of those country desks, and there's another place for that too. And you can call them up or you can email them. And at any time you can say, here's what I'm doing. It's good to get to know this person. Here's what I'm doing. What do you think? Can I add this playground? Or maybe you're just going to want to slip it in and not ask, but you have to make that judgment. But that person will tell you whether your host club is qualified or not, or are they, is their progress report not done? And that progress report might be in some other global grant they're doing with some other person. It might not be, it might be that they're good at progress reports, but some other grant isn't. Okay, we'll keep going. Oh, sorry, is that the question?
Yeah, we have three more. And some of these, if you feel better answering them at the end, then just.
Yeah, I'd like to keep going, and then I'll answer them at the end.
Okay.
Okay, now we've moved on to the budget. So in the budget, you're going to be putting what your country is, and this happens to be Angola, where there is 552 kwanzas to the dollar. And then you get to put in, this is a drop-down menu, could be, and they'll have a category here, and you just click on Add Budget Menu. Then you put in what it is, and then you put in how much it is in these Angola kwanzas, and they'll calculate, and they will calculate what it is. So do you see a mistake here? I see a mistake here. I don't think these 40 desks cost $80. So clearly there's a zero here and a zero here. And so I just hit this little pencil and then I can redo it, okay? Or if I decide not to do desks, I can take that out. So you can see now, it'll calculate my budget. It's 8,000. And so keep that in mind as we go to the next. Now, really important on this step 8 budget, this is the only place in the entire application that you can upload stuff. So this is not just uploading budget stuff, it's uploading everything. Your community assessments there, your MOUs are there, course, you'll have your budget details. You want to put in some pictures. You want to put in your price estimates for things, your pro formas, every documentation thing you need. Might be a water engineering study. You need to put all those things in, upload them right here. Put those files in. So this is the only place, even though it may or may not be related to the budget. Okay, so you've probably seen this, but I'm just going to throw it up again. So for 50/30 clubs, you can, if the clubs have put in $15,000, the district, us, the district, 50/30 will match what the clubs are doing. Rotary Foundation will match that, and they will match the clubs by half. And these are the limits. Now, how does that play out? So on this screen, you can see I've made this up. So this isn't a real grant. I'm going to take this out at the end. So let's say these three clubs here, which are 50/30 clubs, have given these $10,000. Then we will put in $10,000. So that's that direct match. Now, let's say this one in California, Carmel by the Sea, you got to know that Rotary Club, or maybe they're even the international lead. They put in $5,000, but we don't match that. But if they're the lead and you're partnering with them, we still will match out of district grants that 50/30 clubs are partnering with. So we will still have the 10,000. They put in this. Maybe their district will match it. Maybe it won't. That's their business. And then this is the host club here, and they have to put in at least $100. Sometimes they'll put in more. Sometimes their district will match it. Sometimes it won't. So these here, the way I've got it now, Rotary Foundation will match this by half and match that by half. And there's a calculator that does all that. And so they come up with, here's the matching funds they're going to give you, Rotary Foundation. And that's all calculated for you. So here is it. And you can either ask for the whole amount or less. Most people ask for the whole amount. One other thing I'm going to put here is that this stuff here you can ignore. Basically, if in the end you have the Rotary Club, the Rotary Foundation in Illinois collect the money, they're going to charge you 5%, and that's what this would look like. If one of the clubs, like Union, likes to send it into Rotary International, the Rotary Foundation, and have the money stay there, they have their own reasons for doing that. They get Paul Harris points. Then they are going to pay that 5%. So you don't need to mess with this. And this is adding to this down here and is calculating. So they don't have this in the calculations, just ignore it. Okay, so are you totally sound asleep for the long haul? Or are you just eager to learn more? Are there more questions?
Yeah, so we have some questions that are more specific that we can leave to the end. There's three that are more process related. So okay. One is, how do you work with a relatively new club as far as the discipline for it to be the host? Do we need to train them on this procedure?
You mean a new host club? How do you work with a new host club?
Yeah, I believe that's.
Okay, yeah, okay, I'll answer that question. So working with a new host club, again, you want to know basically what their resume is. Have they done any grants? Have they done any Rotary grants? And if they really haven't done that, then you might want to start with a district grant or a direct grant to sort of test them out. Starting with a big global grant with a club that's never done that may not be a great idea. The other thing is that the international club can do the money. So it doesn't have to be the host club. So if this is a new club that you've never worked with before and they don't have a reputation of global grants doing well with them, then I would keep the money and have the receipts sent to you and have them have other roles as you're sort of testing them out. But I really believe in testing the waters before marrying. And you should, you might think about smaller grants first, direct grants or district grant first.
Okay, a couple more process ones. So can you do the needs assessment before you apply?
You have to do the needs assessment before you apply. That's required.
And then another one was, when there are no clubs in the country where the project will take place, can the partner or host club be in a country nearby?
You want to get the closest that you can. And if there are none there, you have to make a case for that those host club people will be going over there and seeing the project. So maybe they have summer homes there. Maybe they have businesses there. You need to make a case of how the host club is going to be involved when it's in another country. But yes, there are a few countries in the world where that happens, yes.
And let me do one more process one, and then I'll save the rest for the end. If RI is charging 5%, then shouldn't we put in an extra 5%?
No, that's only if RI is collecting the club money. And you can collect the club money and not be hit up for the 5%. Good. We'll keep on. We're getting to the end.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that every single measure that they have, every single piece that they have is focused on sustainability. They want these things to last for 10 years, 20 years. That's the investment. We are doing development, not relief work. So for these global grants. So there's a big section where your narrative is. So far we've really done logistics, and now we're going to do the big narrative. And they've asked it in a lot of chopped up questions, which may look to you like these questions here, that there's a lot of overlap here. So it's your job to figure out all the data you want to put in, all the narrative you want to put in, and then split it up among these different questions. Some of these, like describing the community needs and how did you identify them and were the beneficiaries involved and how were they involved, those you can probably clip and paste from your needs assessment, but it needs to be in both places. There is a one-pager that sort of summarizes things, and that, of course, is on your hot links over on the side of your app. These are all separate questions. I didn't think it would be that interesting to put them in, just screenshot them. But now we're back to screenshots, and now we are in implementation here. So you're going to put in your activity, and then how long is it going to take? So this is basically a timeline. You just keep clicking here, putting in all the activities and how long they're going to take in the order they're going to happen. Are you coordinating with any other related initiative in the community? So this would be that maybe you're putting in the school and the government's going to put in a road, or the government's going to do the playground or something like that. So these should be things that the grant is not dependent on. If the grant's dependent on, then it goes up in the MOUs and you have to have an agreement. But if the grant is not dependent on it, but it's offering that there is other community support for buffing up this community, then that's extra points. Definitely put that in. Just be careful. Now, all grants have some form of community outreach, training, education. And so if there's formal training or education, that goes on a training form, which you know is on the hot links over on the side. And it'll be very specific. How many teachers? What are the names of each class? Number of hours? How much you're going to pay the teacher per hour? Those kinds of things are there, very specific for the teaching. And again, how are these needs identified? So again, you have to stretch out your narrative to fill in all those boxes. Okay, and then again, a big sustainability piece. How are you going to finance maintenance and repair? The next one is, are they culturally, is anything you buy culturally sensitive? Of course it is. So just to make a sentence about it, or maybe you're not buying anything, you don't have to deal with that. Always the equipment is owned by the beneficiaries. So tell them who's going to own it. So the nonprofit does not own the asset. You do not own the asset. The beneficiaries own the asset. So who is that going to be? And then how is it going to be sustained long-term? We've been building up to that through this whole grant. Is there a local funding source? So that might be the parents' fees. That might be some other kind of thing. Maybe the government pays that, in which case it's in your MOU. And then not required, but if there's an income generating thing going on, maybe that school's putting in a garden, and they're going to sell the, or maybe it's going to be that they have a water project with it and they're going to sell the bottled water, whatever it is. If there's an income generation thing, fine. If there's not, that's fine too. Okay, that is the entire grant. Now, do not hit that submit button until it is passed by our committee. I've already talked about that. If you want matching funds from the district, DDF, district designated funds, it has to pass by this committee because we're the ones that have the budget for the funds. Make sure your funding is secure. You didn't go to a club and do a passionate program and they said, ooh, wonderful. But that doesn't mean that they're going to commit $2,000. So you don't need to have the $2,000, but you do need to have the commitment. Otherwise, your club's going to have to cover it. And then you work with the host club to make sure there's no more edits. And then you can hit that submit button. Have 2 weeks to just relax, have a vacation, think you've done a great job until they send you that feedback. So you and your host club will review it. You will lock it when you sign it. The first person to sign it locks it. Then it's a read-only document. Getting it unlocked is hard. Then it'll get authorized by the foundation head here. That's Jeff and Bill, the president, whoever, next, Kathy. And then the same thing in the host club. So the district has to sign it, the district foundation has to sign it, and the host club has to sign it. And then it goes to the submit and then feedback. Then you answer all that feedback and you will get to yes. So when you're really getting aggravated about the feedback, just remember, everybody's job is to get to yes. We're here. You can contact us after you've started your grant. I will assign you a mentor from our committee to help you with this. You can always go back to this stack. You can go back to the page and say, what did she really say? And on that website, the 5030 grants, we will have all that information. And Bill, I think, has put it in the chat box. So now I'm ready for questions.
All right, thank you, Kathleen. So we have one question. If we do a grant for adult literacy, what types of funding would we be able to apply for?
That would be education. Adult literacy is one of the things you can check off that they want you to do. And I even made an excuse for adult computer literacy. I was putting a computer lab in primary schools, and I felt like, why should it be locked up all afternoon? Why can't the adults learn? So I put in funds for adult computer literacy for those people who are literate. So I don't know if everybody will allow that. It's very country chair dependent, but yes, definitely adult literacy is covered in the education focus area.
We have one question back on the qualifications slide you mentioned. So
Yep.
You have the MOU, then you have 2 club members attend one of the 4 grant webinars, and then the writer attends the global grant webinar. There's a question on what that global grant webinar was.
This one?
This one, right? Yeah.
And the one I did Thursday night. And yeah, then the one I did Thursday night. Mm-hmm.
We have a
You can
question.
always go back and see it again, but if you're here with this one, you qualify.
One question going back to the TRF and funding of equipment. A question from Stan says, Stan has seen projects that were approved and funded for equipment, installation, training, and maintenance and servicing for it. Is it acceptable because it covers more than just the strict purchase of that?
Right. If it's part of depending on what the equipment is, if it's like I've put in desks and chairs for those computers. Yes, it needs to be part of the whole comprehensive thing with learning, training, sustainability.
We have a question from Ruben. When you're doing clean water and sanitation project, will the grant fund the installation of the toilets? Say, for example, waterless toilets?
Absolutely.
Howard asks, are there examples of approved grants similar to their proposed grant that they can look at to get greater insight into what could and should be included in their grant?
Yes, I think we have some examples on that 5030 grants website. And don't forget, when we pull up a grant, to use it as an example, that's been submitted, but between submitted and approved is all that feedback, and that goes on email, so you won't see what questions they asked. But it'll certainly give you the overall idea. Mm-hmm. Yes. It's also, I think, on the resource page of the district website.
Can you get a global grant number before the quote-unquote final global grant is submitted?
Mm-hmm. So as soon as you fill out that first page, you will have a global grant number.
Okay. And I have it might be a comment from Derek. I'm not sure if it's a question. The club has to be qualified as to contributions to the Rotary Foundation and no overdue reports.
Yes, so the criteria for contributions to the Rotary Foundation applies to district grants and not global grants. Good point, Derek. And then the second part, Yes, the host club has to be qualified by the Rotary Foundation, just like our club does.
We have a question in the chat from Maggie. Can you speak to the simple school exception?
So we're not totally clear on the simple school thing. So we know that Rob Rose this year put in there's a place in Nepal where the earthquake had messed up the schools and they only had like 1 or 2 classrooms, and he added classrooms and buffed up, I think, what was broken down. So the schools were there, but he added classrooms to them, and he did that. And, you know, it sort of says in that don't do it category, but it really might depend on the county desk. We have not been able to find anywhere the exact measurements of what they allow and don't. So if it's a simple school, especially if it's an addition to a school there and it's part of a whole education project, send it to us. And if we think it's not way out of guidelines that we don't have, we'll send it in and they can define it. Maybe the country desk will say yes, and maybe they'll say no, and then you have to redo it. Because the bottom line isn't us, we give advice. The bottom line is what TRF says they're going to allow on that particular grant.
Great. A couple more questions open right now. Could you reiterate about the conflict of interest for host Rotary Club and an international club?
Yeah, so it's very common for a Rotarian in a club to be on a board or even the founder of a small NGO in some other country. And they want a grant, which is totally fair. So that person, if their NGO is being funded by the grant, can't be on the oversight committee for the same grant. So that person needs to infect some other Rotary members in their club with their passion and have them be on the committee. Now, of course, that person is running the NGO, so she can or he can do the work and give the information and help out and all that kind of stuff. But they're not on the committee because the committee is oversight. And that will be true in the host country too, of course.
Great. I have a question from John saying, once you have your global grant number, can you collect donations for that? And where should the check be addressed?
Okay, so I wouldn't collect donations as soon as you have the number. The donations will go into your Rotary. If your club has a Rotary foundation, then the checks would go into that foundation up to $15,000. If you have more donors than that, you can partner with other clubs and put them in their foundation to go up to $25,000, and that's as far as we'll match. But of course, you can raise more money than that. It's just we don't match it, but the Rotary Foundation will match it by half. So I would say get the commitments as soon as you can, and then I would have them start sending the money when you submit.
Okay. A question from Larry on how to keep track of funds managed by your club and those sent to the Rotary Foundation, particularly funds from your host country.
Okay, so it depends on who's doing the accounting. So if the host country is going to be having the specific bank account for this grant, has to be exclusive bank account for the grant approved by the Rotary Foundation, and this is all after they've approved the project, then they will just keep their money there, and the Rotary Club will send the funds that they have gathered from the other clubs to that account. And if something like Lake Union, who likes to go through the Rotary International, sends their funds there, then Rotary International will send all the matching funds and any funds that they have collected down to that account. And that's true the other way around too, if the international club is collecting the money. And all of that happens after you've been accepted. And they have very specific instructions. It's very clear.
We have a question on why the limit on $15,000 to Club Foundation.
So it's an arbitrary limit. Each year we get a budget of a certain amount of money, And each year we want to distribute it. We want everybody who wants to do a global grant to have some matching funds. And so if we didn't have a limit, then somebody coming in with $100,000, maybe somebody's got $50,000 from club donations. If we didn't have a limit, 2 or 3 of those would take up all our DDF, and then nobody else could have a global grant. So it's just trying to spread it out among the clubs. Next year we'll have less, and the year after we're going to have less DDF. So we may need to drop the big limit down to 20. And we've done that before when we've had less. So this all depends on how much your club and every other club in 50/30 gives in to the Rotary Foundation every year. That's the money that's coming back to us.
Great. And I think we've cleared out the questions. So if anyone has more questions, you can either use the raise hand button and I can unmute you and allow you to ask your question live, or you can use the Q&A or chat window as well. So we have another question from Ruben. So regarding donations for matching the limit of $15,000 to the RI Club, 25,000 max, does this mean only an additional $10,000 will be matched, or are we saying $40,000 can be matched?
No, no, 25. So, and those are coming from partners, right?
Let me actually unmute Ruben so they can clarify.
Hi, Ruben.
Ruben, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay. Now, what I'm asking is, let's say, if you can generate more donations, more than 25,000, because you said 15,000 will have to go to the foundation of your club, and then the rest you'll have to send it to partnering clubs. So we're talking about.
No. This doesn't have to do with where the money goes. This has to do with how much you collect. So let's say you go around to a lot of clubs and everybody wants to donate to your terrific cause. So they will, just like I showed you on that slide with the different clubs donating. So one club, so you can get as much money as you can possibly get. That's not a problem.
Sure.
So we're talking about what the district 50/30 will match.
Oh, okay.
Okay, doesn't have to do with where it goes. So we will match up to $15,000 per club. And then we will match a total for the project of 25,000.
Okay.
Okay, does that make it clear?
Sure. But you were saying if you have extra money, you can only put like 15,000 to your foundation, and
No. You can put in all the money you want. Okay, let's say you have $40,000.
Okay.
It just means that that's how much we're going to match.
Okay.
And if there's an overage, you could ask somebody else to partner with you, and you can give them 10,000, and then that partner will have 10,000 to match, and that'll get matched.
Okay.
But also Rotary International will match at 50%. It's just you won't get the district match beyond 25,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
All right, we have a few more questions rolling into the Q&A. Can your project receive DDF from other districts if clubs from that district contributes to your project?
So the sorry about that. Let me just. So the DDF from the other district would be matched. They don't need to send it to us because that will be matched that will be matched the same as our DDF. So they just keep it. In other words, let's say Tacoma is going to contribute. So there'll be a club in Tacoma contributing. If that particular district matches DDF, then that'll be on your list, their DDF, and then that will get matched the same as ours. So that the matching scheme is the same for every club, but not every district does DDF in the same way. That's our choice.
Howard asks, if there are unused DDF funds by the district at the end of the Rotary year, those funds get rolled over to the next Rotary year. Is that correct?
That's correct for global grants, yeah. And a lot of times we have, I mean, we have several grants that we have said, yes, we will hold some DDF for you, or earmark, I should say, some DDF for you, but they're not going to even get submitted till after July 1st. So we roll over those funds and it'll still go to you.
Awesome. Any more questions? Yeah, again, you can put them in the Q&A box, the chat window, or feel free to raise your hand and we can let you ask your question. Awesome. I think that might be it.
Okay. Well, we got finished 10 minutes early, and even more because somebody put it in as a 90-minute seminar, which would be really deadly. So thank you so much for listening. Feel free to go back to this as a reference because we don't expect you to memorize all that information, and have fun dreaming about your projects. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you.